We're going to get started here we're going to get started here in just a few more minutes. We'll wait for perhaps a few more folks to join, and then we'll be jumping on. Hi, Steve. Megan, why don't you go ahead and let me know when you think we have people and we're ready to go? I can always pause or just go ahead and get started.
Becky, let's go ahead and go. We're all really looking forward to it. And again, thank you so much for joining.
I just lost audio. Your audio, Megan.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay, great. All right, so I was just thanking you again for joining us, and I'm facilitating our lunch and learn today about the foundations of IXL, looking at essential tools for daily instruction. So thank you so much, Becky.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for joining me here during your lunch hour. So let's go ahead and dive in. I've got a lot to discuss in the next 60 minutes with all of you. Now, before we dive into things, a couple of housekeeping items, I guess. Before we get started, I want to make sure you know how to get your questions answered. We're kind of a small group right now, so we can do that in a couple of different ways. I do have the chat box pulled up. You are welcome to put anything at any time there. I'll be checking that throughout the session. Also, you can all unmute yourself at the end of different sections. I'll be taking a pause. Simply unmute and get any of your questions that you might have answered that way. And I'm also going to give you my email address here in just a moment. Feel free even to reach out at the end of the session if something comes up later on. Again, I'll be happy to jump on an email and we can get all of those questions answered. So let me introduce myself. My name is Becky Puz. I'm one of the senior professional learning specialists here at IXL. I actually was a classroom teacher as well as an instructional coach for sort of a large school system in the suburbs of the Chicagoland area before I joined IXL. And I used it quite a bit with my own students. But I've also had the benefit of watching my colleagues use it with theirs. So there's a lot of firsthand information in this session today. As promised, underneath my picture down there is my email. I'll give it to you now and then I'll give it to you at the end of the session. Feel free to use that to reach out to me at any time. I always like to start off with this particular slide. I just feel like it brings us all together for exactly what IXL is. The kind of like that big picture question that I used to always ask my students when I first started a lesson. So IXL, as you are going to see, is not only this end-to-end teaching solution for you, but this amazing learning solution for the students that you are working with. And we do have these 5 different components that are going to be working together. For instance, we have this full comprehensive curriculum. It starts at a pre-K level and it can go all the way up through the 12th grade area. There's also personalized guidance that is built right in for all of your students. We also have a number of instructional resources and tools and different ways to keep kids engaged and motivated as they're working. We have this full assessment suite in both math as well as ELA. We have actionable analytic reports, not only for you as a classroom, teacher, but for your students. They have their own reports, and we even have reports for the overall sort of system or district. And then finally, we offer this partnership. Again, everything works together, giving you everything that you need to maximize the learning for every one of your students. Now, we've been growing a lot over the last several years. We now encompass this entire family of educational products. Everything you see on the screen, a couple might look a little familiar to you. Of course, our focus today is just going to be on IXL. If you have any questions around any of those other products, just reach out an email and I'll get back to you. So here's a look at the agenda for the next 60 minutes. And I'm really going to be showing you how IXL can give you everything that you need to make that big positive impact on learning. So we're going to begin by talking about those skills. We're going to explore how they were created to support student-targeted learning. We're also going to be diving into some of those instructional resources that can support and help you build that student confidence. Then we're going to discuss how all of the skills are organized to match really any of the way that you are teaching with your students. We're going to look at all of those strategies from planning your lessons to delivering your lesson, as well as monitoring your students' progress. Then briefly, we're going to take a look at that assessment suite. I'll show you how you could use that as well to even further personalized learning for your students. Again, during this session today, if you want to sign in and follow along in your own account, great. If not, you can just simply watch my screen. I will be sharing everything that you do need to see. So to get started, I always like to do a little basic navigation so that you know where to find everything on not only your account, but we're also going to do a quick preview of a student account just so you can help support them. So this is my teacher account. And in this green bar at the very top is where you're going to find that basic navigation. Now, that first tab, that My IXL tab, this is where you actually land when you sign in, and it is your dashboard. You will come to this tab on a very regular basis. Why? Because there's a lot of great information about your students on the far left, including your roster. We're going to circle back to that in just a moment. We have different ways to keep kids engaged in this center section. The ability for you to create your own quiz using our skills here. And then off to the far right are all of these resources here just for you as a classroom teacher. I do want to go back though and take a look at that roster for a moment. So the roster is just simply the place where you want to make sure that all of the students that you are seeing are listed down here below. Now, what I don't have on my demo account that you will have on yours is a blue bar sort of at the bottom of this roster. And on your blue bar, you'll have a plus sign down at the bottom in case you ever needed to add an additional student. You click that add button and just start typing in. We'll kind of walk you through the information that you would need. Now, based on this roster off to this far right-hand side, you will see your student's username. You'll also see their password for IXL. And if you ever wanted to share that information with your students, there is a really nice ability here in the center to come here and print off a username and password card and pass those out to the students you are working with. It's just a click. You can print, you got a couple choices there, print one off, pass it out, and then the students you're working with will always have their login information. Another ability that you have is in this top right-hand corner. And mine says something like manage classes. Yours might say create classes. Either way, it looks the same. This is just simply your ability to create perhaps some small groups within your roster. So for instance, if I was a teacher and I was working with a couple of different groups of students, I may come here and create these groups by the grade level. For instance, I have one group here already that says like my fifth grade group within my roster. I also have a second group that says my ninth grade group within my roster. I can come and add any other groups that I want. I know some teachers that say perhaps like an intervention group. Now, students will never see the names of these groups, and they can be in multiple groups. In the center, then I'm going to come and I'm going to add all of those students that are in, let's say, this intervention group. Now, this is my full roster, and I'm just clicking the box in front of the name of any student that might be in this intervention group that I am working with. You also have the ability now to create a co-teacher or add a co-teacher to a group. And this would be somebody who has an IXL account there in your building. When you're done, you're going to say done. And now you've created that group. Now, why might you want to do something like that? You're going to see in a moment, then you can assign skills to just that small group of students. And then also when we talk about looking at data, you can pull up just their data to very quickly see how that little small group is doing on those skills. All right, that was just the first tab, My IXL. That learning tab is the next one. This is where you're going to see our full curriculum. Everything from skills in math, language arts, science, and social studies. But then some additional resources like lessons in math, videos in math and ELA, and then there's even games at the lower level in both math as well as ELA. You'll also be able to see these skill plans. We'll be coming here in just a moment. This will all make sense a little bit later. The assessment tab is where you can go to get the data if your students would take our assessment. And then finally, analytics. 18 different reports, gathering the data on how your students are doing on our skills. Now that's your teacher account. I do want to briefly take a look at that student account as well, just so you can support your students. Notice their green bar. It looks very similar to that teacher account. Now, they also have that My IXL tab. It's where they land also when they sign in. Theirs looks a little bit different than the teacher account. In their My IXL tab, they have that ability to quickly see any of those assignments or skills you have assigned for them to work on in this category from their teacher. They can pick up right where they left off in that recent skill tab. And then we're going to be recommending a few things for them as well to work on based on other skills that they've been working on. So they'll find those recommendations listed in that tab. If I scroll down a little bit further, I can see a report on how I'm doing. And then for some students, they always like to come down and see all of these awards that they happen to be winning. Their learning tab mirrors yours. They can step into our assessment arena here in their assessment tab. And then finally, they do have their own analytics. So they have a couple of some of the teacher favorite reports. They will have a couple of their own reports listed here. So now that you know where to find everything, at least briefly there, let's start diving in and start talking about our skills. So I want you to imagine for just a moment, if somebody took everything that students need to learn from the time they enter school until the time up through, let's say, 12th grade, and they broke down that learning path into every little step along the way with no gaps at all. Well, at IXL, we have done just that. And I think we might be the only product out there to have done this with now over 17,000 different skills. Now, our full comprehensive curriculum covers everything. And I'm going to go to my learning tab as a student so we can take a look at the curriculum here. But it covers everything in those four subject areas. In math, we begin with skills at a pre-K level, and we do go all the way up through that high school level or calculus. Now, language arts, very similar. If I'm clicking on language arts, again, as a student, I can see everything from a pre-K level all the way up through that 12th grade level. Now, science and social studies are just a bit different. Science and social studies actually both begin at a kindergarten level, going all the way up through 8th grade. But as you can see here in science, we have recently added this new sort of high school level biology course, or in other words, they're going to see skills there at a high school biology level. For social studies, again, kindergarten through 8th grade, but for the high school level, we've been adding in a civics and government skills listed here as well. Now, we built this full extensive content library to really ensure that wherever your students are in their personal learning journey, that we have the right skills to support them and guide them towards mastery at their own pace. So, what is a skill? Well, we take any concept or topic that the student might be learning, and then we break it down into all of these small building blocks. So, for the example, the American Revolution, right? That's the topic. And then here are these building blocks that perhaps we might want our students to be working on. Those are the skills. Those skills are going to be very targeted. They allow students to build mastery of that concept one step at a time. The nice thing also about our skills is that they are designed to be truly adaptive. And that means that at every step along the way, IXL is going to be adjusting to each and every one of the learners to really support them, challenge them, and motivate them at a place that is just right for them. I hope that this is what is keeps your kids, your students engaged and inspired to want to keep working to reach their full potential. Now, I do want us to take a look at a skill together, first off, from the student perspective. And students can get to skills in a couple of different ways. Just like I'm on the student screen right now, I certainly could pick any skill and click on it and start working on it. So that's one way students can get to skills. A second way students can get to skills is because their teacher assigned it to them. Like I'm looking at right now, and I see I've got a couple of skills assigned to me from my teacher listed below. The final way would be for IXL to recommend a few things for them. Remember, and all of those recommendations are going to be in that tab off to the right. Now, we'll get into all of that in just a little bit. For now, I just want you to simply watch my screen. Let me grab this ninth grade ELA skill around what's a phrase or a clause. And with a click, I'm into my skill. So as your students are working on skills, anytime they answer something correct, they're going to get that immediate positive feedback. It just simply lets them know they're on the right track. And remember, I said the skills are designed to be adaptive. So gradually over time, the skill is going to be adapting to me and getting harder when I'm answering those questions correctly. So let's just answer a few more here, getting some right, getting some wrong. Off to that right-hand side, I'll see how many questions I've answered altogether, how much time I've been actively working, and this will pause if I would walk away. We're trying to be very as accurate as possible around their active time spent on IXL. And then down at the bottom here, there is this SMART score. Notice it is growing with each one of my correct answers. So again, what have I answered here? About 3 questions. I've gotten them all correct, and I'm at a SMART score of a 28. To me, the best part though is when my kids have made a mistake. Here's what I mean. So if I make that mistake, something like that, in the moment, then my students are going to see that they made that mistake. Down below, we'll tell them what the correct answer is, what they said the answer is, and then they're going to get this explanation. We'll talk more about this explanation in just a moment. Once they've had an opportunity to look through that full explanation and even how they should have solved it, they're going to say, got it. And it's going to bring them right back up to a question that is a bit easier. Now, notice my SMART score dipped just a little bit, but I'm always able to get that score back up again by answering questions correctly. So let's talk about that SMART score for just a moment, because honestly, it is key to IXL. All of our skills are always going to begin at a 0 level. The highest SMART score level that it can get to is a 100. And I want you to keep a couple of these scores in mind. An 80, we consider the student to be proficient on that skill. A 90, they're excellent. And that SMART score means that of 100 means that they've truly mastered that skill. That SMART score is an advanced algorithm unique to IXL. It's the only scoring system out there that I'm aware of that can capture the student's current level of understanding in the moment. It can tell you where your students are in their path towards grasping the concept that they're learning. It's also the only scoring system designed for a growth mindset. It sort of is expecting that as your students are learning, they're going to improve as they go. And that SMART score grows just as your students will. Now, although it starts at that 0 level when they first begin, and the highest level it can get to is that 100, it's not a percentage. With a percentage scoring system, if a student is working on skills, and let's say they miss 3 out of 10 questions, right? They're at a 70% overdone. That's their score. There's nothing that they can do about it. But with our SMART score, just like you saw when I missed some questions, my score might dip just a little bit, but I'm always able to go back in, answer a question correctly, and keep doing that learning piece. And then that SMART score will go back up once again. So basically, it can tell if a question is too hard or too easy for the learner. It then is going to adjust that next question, and that gives them a question at a just right level for them. That is providing that scaffolding, of course, to help them learn and grow. We've done lots of research on that SMART score. We designed it intentionally this way, and we feel like it does help our students to make some of those greater learning gains. I also felt like with my students, it helped them to build that grit and determination to keep at it. So it's all about setting some goals around that SMART score to motivate students and their learning. Now, remember, I said to keep a couple of those numbers in the back of your mind. Okay. Remember, 80 meant that they were proficient, 90 excellent, and that 100 means that they've mastered the skill. Well, mastery can be a very high standard, challenging to achieve. So that is not necessarily the appropriate goal to set for all or some of your students. Again, I'm going to go back to our research. What we've seen in all of the studies that we have done is that by having students work on a skill and reach at least that SMART score of an 80, that positively impacts students' performance on things like state assessments or any of those assessments that your students perhaps might be taking. So for me, that was the goal in my classroom. Work on a skill. Here's a skill I want you to work on, or any of the skills that they were working on. Get to at least that SMART score of an 80. Now, they can always challenge themselves if they want to and go beyond. And in fact, what we recommend is 2 skills per week per subject to that 80 or above to have the greatest impact. So if you can help them set those meaningful goals, and that's verbally, you're just letting them know, here's a skill I want you to work on, get to at least an 80 or above. But if you set those goals for your students and have them strive for proficiency or higher, instead of just bouncing around from skill to skill, IXL can really help your students gain that foundation that's going to stay with them and help them grow. That was a lot of information around that student practice as well as the SMART score. Any questions?
Hi, Becky. I know that you were going over the different grade levels that were aligned to Kentucky state standards. I was wondering if maybe, since a lot of our instructors are working towards helping their adult students earn their GED, maybe you could show them the GED skills tab as well.
Absolutely. We'll be covering that in just a moment. Before we move to that teacher side and we look for these different skill plans where we've already gone in and aligned our skills to make it really easy for you to find, there's one additional tool I want to share on the student perspective first. And that is some of those instructional resources that are built in for students. So these instructional resources can help your students build that confidence and get that support as they are working independently. To do that, I'm just going to go back to another skill that, let's say, my teacher had assigned to me. As your students are working on any skill, they're always going to start off in any math or any ELA skill with this opportunity to learn with an example. So, as a student, if I'm not sure what I need to do here to begin, I can choose to look through an example. Now, the example question is going to be similar to what I'll see in these other questions. So I can look through the example, look through those key ideas, step-by-step instructions and more, so that I can be successful on this particular skill. There's sometimes even in our math skills, starting at a 3rd grade level and going all the way up through geometry, there's an additional resource sometimes available, which is a lesson. And these are like a little mini study guide as well. This study guide goes into a lot of great detail around that particular topic. This can also be printed off if that student wants to print that off, or if you'd like to print that off for the student. But great detail, definitions, examples, and more. When they're ready to return, it's a click on that top right. They're right back to where they started. The example goes away after they answer the first question. There are also video tutorials that we've been adding in fact, thousands of them. In math, they're going to start at a 1st grade level. They now go all the way up through a pre-calculus level. ELA, they start at pre-K, they go up through 8th grade. The videos stay available throughout the entire time a student is working, so they will always have the support of being able to watch the video. So with a click, this is an example of what that video might
Today we'll be
look
learning how to
like.
find the greatest common factor, or GCF, of monomials. The key idea behind this is in order to find the GCF, we'll first find the prime factorization of each monomial.
I'm going to pause that. Again, videos available throughout the entire time. Other supports for your students, they can work it out by using a scratch pad, working something out right here on the screen. And we do have audio support that actually goes up through 2nd grade. You don't have to do anything there. But as you can see, I'm in an algebra skill. So you also have that ability to extend out audio support all the way up through that high school level in all subject areas. Finally, we have support as far as language support in our math, science, and social studies skills. so that if a student needs a question translated into one of, I think we have now over 55 different languages that we can translate all of these questions into. Mine is set up for Spanish, and it would look something like this. They could then toggle back and forth between English and Spanish. So now that we know what it looks like for students and all of the support that they are going to be receiving as they're working, let's start talking about you a bit more and how you can find these skills and apply them into your daily instruction. To do that, we're going to talk about those 3 simple steps, how you can use them to plan your lessons, deliver your lessons, as well as monitor your students' progress. So remember, you have access to over 17,000 skills, and we've gone in and we've organized our skills in a couple of different ways. So you can find the exact right one that you're looking for that's going to be supporting, let's say, a learning objective for your students. So curriculum, if you remember, right in that learning tab in the very top. Now I'm going to be demonstrating right now using math. Any one of our other content areas you could click on as well, and you would see this organization listed down below. Here's what I mean. The first way we organized our skills is by a grade level. Again, no matter the subject area. So if I'm a teacher looking for something specific to a grade level, this is where I would go if I were you. For instance, let's say Algebra 1. Coming to Algebra 1, I'm going to open up those 374 skills. I'm now looking for a topic that I might be working on with a student or students, like, for instance, linear functions. So I found my topic. Now I'm going to make that decision on which one of these skills I want them to work on. To get that little preview, you just simply hover over the name of any skill. You'll see a couple of examples of the questions students might receive as they are working. Let's say that is not the skill you want, then I would go down to the next skill listed below until you find something appropriate for the student or students to work on. So that is finding skills by a particular grade level. Again, no matter the subject. Yes, Steve, I agree. Steve just mentioned he's really glad we added civics and government. Absolutely, I agree. I couldn't agree more. We have another way, though, for you to find skills as well beyond something by a grade level. And that is finding something in these different skill plans. So skill plans offers you the ability to find things around your state standards, different textbooks perhaps you are using, as well as a number of different assessments. Now, you do have some filtering options here. And for demo purposes today, let's just kind of keep it all subjects and all grade levels. But of course, you go ahead and filter for something specific that you are looking for. Now, I'm going to very briefly highlight a couple of these. I'll spend a little bit more time in the test prep because that's where you'll find that GED assessment, and we'll walk through that one specifically. But just so you know, you have access to all 4 of these different plans. We do have this alignment to state standards in math, language arts, science, and social studies. If you did want to find something by a standard, this is where you would go by just simply hovering over the state flag and the subject. Going into the grade level, we'll stick with Algebra 1 here as the example, and opening that up. We've gone in, we've already looked at the different standards by the different domains. And let's say it was something on number and quantity. We unpacked the standard already for you. And now we're suggesting a couple of skills that would align with whatever unpacked standard you are teaching. So it's just such a simple way to find skills aligned to any state standard. There is something I do want to point out in any of these skill plans we're going to discuss. There is this gray pin off to this left-hand side. If I'm going to use this plan often, I am going to want to make sure I click on that gray pin. When I do hover over it, it is actually going to ask me, like, is it going to be for everybody? Because not only will I have easy access to this, but whatever students I choose to pin it for, they'll have easy access to this plan as well. So of course I don't need it for my fifth graders or my intervention group. Maybe it's going to go straight to my ninth grade group. Anytime you pin something, it just lands at the top of your page. So now I don't have to scroll and look for it over and over again. The next category that we do have are around a number of textbooks. I will actually let you go and play around with that one, very similar to the standards. If you're using a certain textbook, come here, look at our hundreds of textbooks. We have an alignment for math, ELA, a few also for science and social studies. You'd be able to see that alignment as well. And if you're going to use any of those, definitely pin it so that it sits at the top of this page. Let's move into this final category, though, around test preparation. We also have this, as you can see, this alignment to all of the assessments you see right here on the screen. The one I definitely want to highlight, though, is that GED. Again, here are those pins. I would already pin this, hovering over the pin here and deciding who you are going to want to pin this for. Let's just say everybody on my roster, and I'll grab both of these different areas, mathematical reasoning as well as reasoning through language arts. So now that I have pinned those, let's open them up and take a look. We'll start with mathematical reasoning. So within this plan, you will see the different levels listed down below. And we also have sort of broken it down into the, this one is between 100 and the 144. This is that level 1. A level 2 would start at, if I jump down to a level 2, that 145 up to that 164. So with this plan, you will see different skills already aligned to different categories that perhaps you might want your students to be working on. So again, just like I did before when I hovered over the name of a skill back in that grade level, here, if I would like to have my students work on some work around order, fractions, and decimals, then I'm doing a little hovering as well. Got a couple of options here, so I can make that decision. Is it this skill perhaps I want my students to work on? Or maybe it's the one that is listed down below. So take a look at that skill plan. Again, looking through different areas of skills that we want our students to work on. Now, in this plan, there's sort of a different opportunity here. We call this a checkpoint opportunity. Notice it's at the bottom of this particular category. Got one listed here. We've got a couple that are listed here as well. Let me explain what a checkpoint skill is. A checkpoint skill are questions within this skill, and I'll hover over this one, that are kind of at a higher level of difficulty for your students. In fact, let me click on one just so that we can take a look at what it looks like. In this particular skill, it's again going to sometimes be multi-step, where the students are going to have to do a couple of things before they can choose an answer. So any of these checkpoint skills, I would still have my students work on it until they get to at least that SMART score of an 80 or even higher. But I'm also not going to assign this perhaps at the very beginning of this particular topic. I would definitely do a couple of these other skills first, and then maybe give them a checkpoint skill to use at the end of a particular topic. So to me, they were like sort of a summative kind of a skill that I wanted my students to work on. Again, do they have to do all 4? No, you're hovering over and taking a look to see which one of these checkpoints in this category you might want them to work on. So we've talked about a couple. This was that mathematical reasoning. Let's drop down to that other category, reasoning through language arts. Just want to show you what this one looks like as well. Again, we have the different levels listed. You can come in, decide maybe this is some of your small group work with different students. Notice in this category, we are using some passages here from some very popular novel studies. Anne of Green Gables, Part 1 and Part 2. A Long Walk to the Water is listed down below. We don't have the full text listed here, but this is going to be a couple of different passages. We're going to ask your students to go in and analyze a portion of one of those passages. So we've had that opportunity to take a look at a couple of different ways to find those skills. Talked about finding things through a grade level. Then we moved over here to these skill plans, and we've talked about using those skill plans. We focused on standards, and then we moved to the GED. And within any skill plan, as a reminder, we talked about making sure you pin it so that you have easy access to it anytime you click on your skill plans, but so that your students have easy access to any of these pinned skill plans as well. By the way, you might be wondering, okay, but where do my students see this? Remember, I mentioned earlier that Learning tab as a student mirrors that of the teacher. If I'm a student and I'm hovering over my Learning tab, I'm going to see my skill plans listed here. And with a click, if you have pinned it for me, I'm also going to see it sitting here at the top. Certainly, as a student, I'd be able to come and click here and begin working on any of those skills in either of those two subject areas. So now that we know how to find things, I do want to show you how you can be very explicit and start to assign or share skills. But before I do that, are there any questions? Perfect. Let's get kids working then. So let's go back to that GED, and I'm going to choose that mathematical reasoning here. Let's say I find a skill, perhaps this one, that I really want to assign to my students. To assign something, to alert them to a specific skill you want them to work on, you're going to slide to the left and hover over the star. When this star, as you're hovering, there's a menu that appears. Sliding into the menu, I can now decide who I'm assigning it to. I know it says suggest. In my mind, it always means assign. Is it everybody on my full entire roster? It's the first star. If it's a small group of students that you have created, go ahead and perhaps click that intervention group that we created back in the roster. Also, off to this far right-hand side, you'll see these arrows. If I click on the arrow for any of those groups, it's just the roster of students within that grouping. So this is a really great way to differentiate who gets what skill to work on. Maybe I'm coming here and I'm assigning it just, my top, 4 students. Here I'm assigning it, that top one, to my top 4 students. Maybe the next one, as I'm hovering over that star, you know what? I'm going to assign it to all of my students except for those top 4. So here I'm going to unassign it by unclicking the star for those top 4. Now, everybody on my roster has been assigned a skill around multiples and factors in this particular category or range, but I've actually differentiated who is getting what skill to work on. So you can do the same thing as we were talking about the students that fell or in this particular range, right? You might come in there as you're hovering over that star. And again, only those students that fell within that range, that 100 to the 144, you're assigning it specifically to them. Now, you've got that next group that are at that level 2. You are now hovering over that star when you find something, coming to all students, opening up the roster. And now you are assigning this skill for those students that fell in this range, and so on. So it's just an easy way to assign specific skills or differentiate for your students. Where do they see that assignment? Right on their dashboard as soon as they log in. Here's how this works. The one that was most recently assigned to me lands at the top of this section from my teacher. Whenever you want to erase an assignment, like you don't need something assigned anymore for your students, all you have to do is go and click on the name of a star, or not the name of the star, but click on the star. And now it is no longer assigned to that group or any of my students. You will always still get the data on how they did. They just don't see that assignment in that box from their teacher anymore. So that's one way to assign skills. The next way to either assign or share skills is this. I always recommend click on the name of the skill yourself. I'm on my teacher side. Notice how much this looks exactly like your student side. In fact, you could use the example or the video as part of your instruction with your entire group or a small group. After that instruction, here's the star. You can actually assign it right here. You also have that ability to share the skill using that 3-character ID. Sometimes I would just simply give them the ID number, and then all the students have to do is use their search bar. In this case, typing in that ID number is going to show them that exact skill match. Clicking here, they're now into the skill we wanted them to work on. You've got 2 more options. Off to the right, you can share the skill using the link. So sharing the link, putting that in your learning management system, perhaps. Or if you're using Google Classroom, that's the second icon listed to the right. So no matter how you are assigning or sharing skills for students, you're always going to want to make sure, here's a skill, work on it till they get to that 80 or above. So quick question, audio support. Let's go to sort of, since I'm here anyhow, let's go to that mountain in this top right-hand corner and give that a click. You've got this ability in this mountain to see your different profile and settings. In your profile and settings, you can customize the experience of IXL for your students. And you've got a number of different options. Here's what I mean. The first area is hiding things by the grade level. So in other words, instead of sharing the grade level that the skill is coming from with the student, by saying enable, clicking those 3 dots and enabling this, it would now show all of our skills in an alphabetical order. Sometimes I found that that was helpful for students that are working well below their grade level. So this is what this looks like now. Instead of seeing things in that grade level, notice it's just in that order. Again, just pointing out some options for you. You can do any of these settings for the entire group, that small group that we have created, because here are those groups, or off to the right, those individual students. Here's a few other options. Sometimes teachers like to hide the timer. Kids sometimes get distracted with that timer. Enable that for some or all students. Here's audio support. I already have mine extended. Clicking the 3 dots, again, it takes all of our skills all the way up through that 12th grade level, providing them with that audio support. Translation support. If we need to have questions translated for math, science, or social studies, all the way up through the highest level, enable this tool. Click the 3 dots, choose your students with the arrow off to the right. And then again, I believe there are now over 55 different languages you can choose for an individual student. There is also that scratch pad, and you could always hide that if the kids, aren't using that. And then we do have games up through 5th grade. If you want to enable the hiding the games tool, you could hide those games there as well. Questions around what we've just talked about, either the settings or assigning or sharing skills.
Becky, the last time I was on the translation key, IXL did not have that many languages. That is amazing. And what a wonderful thing for our ELL students.
Yes, we added that in over this summer. And I think every week it started off with 50. And then I think every week since we've been adding 1 more and 1 more and 2 more. So like I said, I know we're well over 55. I haven't done a count lately, but so many different languages I know. And what a great tool to support our English language learners. All right. Another tool that I would like to share with you as well as an educator, as a teacher, is this ability to start something called a group jam. Let me explain, let me back up a moment here. Remember when students are working on any of those skills, right, that we've either assigned to them or write in that GED skill plan. Anytime students are working on a skill, it's adapting to them. In fact, you could have your entire class or small group of students working on the same skill, but independently, it's going to be adapting to them. So no one has the exact same question at the same time. If you did want everyone working on the same question, then you're going to want to start something called a group jam. So group jams are just this kind of, I don't know, I think they're a fun way to engage your small group or your entire class. You can use these jams to check for understanding, practice as a group, or kind of create a friendly competition. Group jams are going to be found at the very bottom of any skill that you click on as an educator. So if I'm in my learning tab, let's go to that GED skill plan for just a moment. I'll use the reasoning with language arts as the example. Any skill that I click on, let's go down to, I don't know, something like, there we go, this one. On the bottom right-hand side then is my opportunity to come down here and start this group jam. So really, right at your fingertips, you have this great engaging opportunity. Now you do have a couple of different options to begin it. You're going to choose what skills are all going to be included in this jam. So are the questions just coming from this one single skill, or are you going to add other skills? And we actually pair some that might match nicely. So maybe also for tone. And then we have a brand new option we just added, I think this last week, which is to start a lightning jam. So you've got our classic, and then you've got this opportunity to do something in what we call this lightning jam. No, we're going to stick with the classic for now, but I will explain what the lightning jam looks like as well as we're walking through the classic. I'll sort of explain what the difference is if you would choose this option instead. So clicking my classic, I also then get to pick the students I want to participate. It can be everyone, one of those groups we created in our roster, or even some individual students. Let's simply go with those ninth graders, scroll down to the bottom and say, let's get started. Now, I've started it. I'm going to see the same question appear on my screen that's going to appear on all of the students' screens that I've just chosen. They will know that a group jam has started because they see this blue banner across the top, and they're going to simply join with a click. Now, remember how we said that everyone sees the exact same question. So you can do a couple things at this point. You could provide a little instruction and then simply say answer, or say, you know what, here's the first question, go ahead and answer it on your own. After the student answers and they click that green submit button, they are going to see the full explanation, just like they do in their skill practice. Now you have complete control over the pacing of these group jams. And as your students are answering the question, you're going to get some real-time data to inform your next steps. So you could choose to hover over, these are like little avatars of your students. And if you hover over any of those avatars, you'll see their name as well as their particular answer. So you can use this information to inform your instruction or what you're going to be doing next. Now, remember I said I was going to sort of highlight the difference between the classic version and then this brand new lightning jam version. So what I'm showing you is classic. In the lightning jam, when your students go and they answer the question here, we're going to actually give them points. And they get more points if they're answering quickly and correctly. So it kind of creates more of that competition kind of a feel to it instead. So just sort of sharing what that difference is. Now, once most or all of your students have answered, you're going to want to come to this far right and review this with your students. Reviewing this just gives you now the opportunity to have a discussion with this group of students. Maybe I noticed they were getting it all, many of them were getting it wrong. So I'm going to do a little bit more teaching around that last question. Or maybe I pair the students up and they explain to one another why they chose the answer they did. When I'm ready, I have control over the pacing. I'm going to give the next question. Same level of difficulty. Sometimes I can go harder, sometimes there's an easier option, or I can move to that next skill. This is just an example of what it looks like as we're moving to the next question. When I'm done, I'm going to end that jam, and ending a group jam sends my students to go practice this skill independently on their own. So kind of like a, we did it together, now you go do it on your own. Students then get assigned this, and now I'm sent to my skill practice, and I'm going to start now that independent practice. What do you get? At the end of a group jam, you get this great summary where we're going to analyze their performance, how they did, who was at the top, their students' scores, and at the very bottom, you're going to see a list of questions that proved the most challenging to the group. So, quick pause. Walked through what a group jam is. Are there any questions about when you might want to use it? All right. Check out that lightning jam. Maybe do a classic one first. To me, in my mind, there's different reasons why I would do the classic version, maybe more like at the beginning as I'm introducing a topic, and then maybe save that lightning jam more towards the end of a subject, or maybe at the end of the week of me already, teaching around a particular concept. I don't know that I would do the lightning jam at the very beginning of teaching a brand new concept. But definitely play around. Let me know what you think. As your students then are working on IXL, you've got a lot of different ways to monitor their progress. We're going to focus on a tool that we hear is one of the favorites, but it's a great tool to really monitor and support students in the moment. To get to this tool that I'm referring to, you're going to go to your My IXL tab and just simply give it a click. And before we jump to that tool, there is a little bit of data here I do want to mention. I want to show you a couple of things that you're going to find right here on your dashboard. First off, this part can be motivational to students. How many questions, that have been answered so far from all students this year? You'll see their skill progress over to the left. Now, this part is interesting. This is how many skills kids have literally opened up and started to practice. And this number was always very important to me. Of those that they started to practice, how many are they getting to at least that proficient level, SmartScore of an 80? And then the top number here is of those proficient, did they can take onward all the way up to that mastery level? Oh, quick question. Somebody says, how can we incorporate the jams through a Zoom class? Let's assume students are only using one device, the laptop showing the Zoom. Do you ever do those? I've seen teachers do it, and I know when we did like remote learning, creating those those different like rooms. If you could do it that way, so pull a group of students in. Yeah, thank you, breakout rooms. Thanks, Steve. So that's a nice way to do that. Grab those kids, put them in a breakout room, and then only choose those kids to do the jam with. On this dashboard, again, great information at the top. Scrolling on down though, I want to point out this area. Here underneath suggested skills and my teacher tools, I'm going to see a list of all of the skills I've been starring for my student. It's sort of that one place to go to unassigned skills. And I can do that one at a time or clear them all out with just one simple click. Here you have some of your other tools that you'll use, like your pinned skill plans. You could jump right to those. If you created a quiz, you could jump to your quizzes. So really, this is kind of like your launch pad for a number of different features. But I'm going to focus in on this particular tool. I do have one student that is currently working on IXL right now. That, of course, would be simply me. So if I wanted to come here and click, it's going to take me right to my live classroom. One other place that you can get to live classroom. If I just simply hovered over my IXL, remember, here are these engagement tools. We talked about the group jam already, but here is the live classroom as well, just a second place you could get there. So at the very top, you're going to get this nice summary on what's happening in that group, in this live classroom, what your kids are up to. Every one of your students are going to be listed down below, and everyone is going to have their own tile. So you'll see their name, the skill that they happen to be working on, their SmartScore in real time, how many questions they've answered all together. And actually, that's a link. If I was wondering, let's say I have a student that's missing a lot of those questions, And I'll know that because of this bar down below. Green means they're answering things correctly, and pink means that they're starting to miss questions. So let's say the student's missing questions. If I click on that link, I'm getting this pop-up on those most recent questions. So I can scroll on down, take a look on what it is that perhaps is causing them some difficulty. Okay. At this point, maybe I can't go over and support that student, or maybe they are at home and I'm at another building. I can always still take a look and send that student a live message. That's that airplane up here beside their name. Clicking on the airplane, I've got a lot of quick messages. So you don't have to type something of your own. Maybe choose something down here. But if you wanted to say, let's send a direction, like, don't forget to kind of thing. I don't know, to something. And I send that off to the student, then that student is going to see that message up here at the top of their page. Now, students are only able to respond by using one of those four icons. Here's the thing. I always tell my students, either send me the check or the smiley face back acknowledging you saw my message. But if you need additional support, please send me the question mark back. I will see how the student responds if I refresh. And then I will know how I need to support that student. So I sent them the message. You can see down there, if I hover over that again, I can see they sent me that little question mark back. So now I know I need to go and support that student a bit more. So Live Classroom is going to let you monitor students, see what they're up to provide that support the moment that they need it, and even give those either directions, or let's say they happen to be on the wrong skill. You could click live message and even put the link to a correct skill right there in the box. Questions around Live Classroom? So far today, I've been showing you how you can use IXL skills to support your daily instruction. But IXL can also be used to pinpoint gaps in their knowledge and then create this personalized action plan for all of your students to help them grow from exactly where they are. Now, our assessment suite is the only unified assessment and learning solution that provides your students with this clear path forward post-assessment. The information that you can get here is going to be directly and immediately actionable. And you're going to receive some really great, precise data to inform your instructional decisions. Now, this is an option that I'm presenting to you, right? You don't have to have your students take our assessment, but maybe you've noticed, or even your students have noticed, that they do have that assessment tab here at the very, very top. So if you wanted them to take our assessment in either math or language arts, all your students would have to do is click on that assessment tab. It's all set up and ready to go. Once here, they're going to step right into the arena to begin. Language arts off to the right, math off to the left. Briefly, let me show you what this is going to look like for your students. Now, if your students are rostered from kindergarten through 8th grade, they're going to be working on our newer math assessment, and we call this assessment the math benchmark. For your students that are rostered in 9th through 12th grade, they will also have a math assessment, but it is going to be called the math diagnostic. Here's the thing, is we've made some adjustments to our math diagnostic, and we've started off with the kindergarten through 8th grade level first. So I just wanted to point out the differences that your students might see. Language arts, still just that classic ELA diagnostic for all students, kindergarten through 12th grade. But if I'm going to go into, we'll use the language arts as an example. In language arts, when they first step in, we do give them a choice in language arts between a couple of questions. That is just simply to give them a little ownership over the process. All kids, no matter either the math or the language arts assessment, are always going to start with questions at their rostered grade level. And then just like the skills that adapt, these questions are going to adapt as well. So as I'm answering questions in ELA, we're going to let them know whether they're getting it right or wrong. So again, the classic diagnostic version of math or ELA, we do provide that feedback. So let's see, getting again, right and wrong, they get those dancing dots. They get notified if they get something right. If they would miss something, we give that little neutral type of a statement, not quite, we'll work on it a little bit later. In both assessments, all assessments, they do have a scratch pad. So they do have a pencil and a highlighter. Again, maybe they're circling something or highlighting something to focus in. And in our classic version, there's going to be this, I don't know this yet. This was placed here so that students don't feel stuck if they truly haven't been taught something just yet. It marks it as incorrect, but it keeps the process moving along. Here's the difference with the new math assessment. Again, this is only for your students that would be rostered up through 8th grade. The new math assessment for them is going to give them questions, but notice when I answer something right or wrong, there's no feedback in this new math assessment. There is also no option to say, I don't know this yet. There is the scratch pad though, on the top right-hand corner. So as the students are working, perhaps getting some right and getting some wrong, you'll notice that support here. There is audio support though built in to the math assessments. Either way, it's going to work very efficiently to capture their knowledge levels. So in as little as about 45 to 60 minutes per subject, they will have this single pinpointed score. After they receive that score, they are then going to get this action plan for every one of your learners. And this action plan is going to have a list of skills we recommend that they work on based on their performance within the assessment. These skills are great to work on at any time, like that independent work time, or maybe even after school, but they're supporting your students at whatever level they are at. By the way, I keep talking about the levels. The levels do correspond to grade levels. So a 530 would mean that they know overall in math, 30% of that 5th grade material. We also break it down into 5 or 6 different math strands and 4 different language arts strands. So I just wanted to give you a brief preview. We can certainly go into more detail. And if you want more information, send me some emails and I'll reach out to you with that information. But to begin generating those personalized action plans, have kids take the assessments, have them step into the arena. Questions?
And Becky, how
All
long
right.
did you say it usually takes them to finish the diagnostic?
The initial setting is about 60 minutes per subject, and it doesn't have to be done all in one sitting. It can be done over multiple days. It'll pick up right where they left off. So initially 60 minutes because we're trying to get a single pinpointed score. We're pinpointing their levels. I always recommend if they do take it, have them step back in on a pretty regular basis. So maybe every other week or at least once a month. Here's why, because then we get an updated score and then your students will get updated list of skills we recommend that they work on based on their current knowledge levels. And that only takes about 10 minutes of time after that initial setting.
Great, thank you.
Of course. All right, everybody, it is time for us to begin our wrap up. And as we come to the end of our time, I want to remind you, as you have seen, there's just simply so many ways to use IXL in your classroom. Use it with whatever way fits with you, as well as the students that you are working with. For some resources for you, I want you to visit your My IXL tab, hover, and go to that far right. Resources are here. The area I specifically want you to explore are these little IXL mini videos. These are here just for you around a lot of the topics that we just discussed today and more. I also wanted to leave you one more time with my email address in case you didn't jot that down before. And I also have this little survey, if you don't mind. I'm going to drop that right into the chat box for all of you. If you could fill that out, I do appreciate any feedback that you might have on our session today. Other than that, are there any final questions? Well, again, I appreciate your time, your lunchtime there. Reach out to me with anything. I'm always happy to help support. Have a great day, everyone.